this video we're going to be looking at how to set up and use arrays in C#. So this is the same Scripting Basics program that I've been typing into through this series, and we're going to start working with an array. An array is a ordered list of items. So think of it like a to-do list with numbered lines, and you're writing down, maybe I'm going to go to the store and then I'm going to go get a hamburger and whatever. You just put a list on there, or maybe it's like a shopping list where you're putting all your items and you put one item per line and you have those in order. That's what an array is. So we are going to first of all declare an array. An array is a variable type because it holds information, but instead of holding one piece of information, it holds several pieces of information. So up in our variable section here, at the top, I'm going to make a public variable, and we're going to make this a string. And to make this an array, instead of just one string, I'm going to put my square brackets in, an open and closing square bracket. And then I'm going to give a name here. So this is going to be my, let's do shopping list. Okay, so this is going to make me an array of strings, and it's going to be under the name shopping list. Right, so these square brackets make an array of the type that we specify. Okay, in this case, string. So if I save this and go out into Unity and look at my camera here that has the script, you see now that shopping list showed up. Shopping list has a little drop down arrow here. If I drop it down, it says right now it has a size of 0. So this is what we call a unity array. And they're kind of nice because they allow us to assign things and change them out here in the inspector. So let's say I'm going to have a list of 5 items. So I'm going to put size 5, hit enter. It's going to give me 5 places here to put information. So I can type the information right out in here if I want to, or I can type it into the code. You notice that it numbers these, it calls them elements. So these are elements of the array. And it starts at 0. So element 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So one thing to know about arrays is it's a numbered list, but it starts numbering at number 0, not number 1. So number 0, let's say we're going to get some chips, and then we're going to get maybe hot dogs, and then we need some buns for those hot dogs, and maybe some potato salad, and some mustard. Alright, so here's our list. Okay, so I can just assign values right out here in the inspector, and sometimes that's what we do. Alright, so that will fill all those spots with the one that I typed in here. Okay? So that is an array. Now I'm going to go back into here to Unity. To get information out of an array, we have to specify what element, what position in that array we want to pull information from. So in my start function here, let's just add in here, this is how to get an element from an array. So a piece of information from an array. What you would do is you put the array's name in here. So the shopping list, that's the whole array. Okay, but I want just one piece of the array. So what I can do is put my square brackets. Square brackets are what we use with arrays. And inside the square brackets, I can give it a number. And that number would be the element number I want. So let's say I ask for element number 3. Okay. So that would actually give me element number 3. Now let's actually put this in a debug. And in the debug.log, let's just enclose that in here. And what it should do is it should print out for me what the string is that's contained in element 3 of my shopping list. So let's save this and go back into Unity here. Let's clear out the console. So element number 3 right here is potato salad. So it should print the word potato salad down here in the console when I hit play. So let's see what it does. And it did. Okay, so there you go. So I was able to get the information from the shopping list array at element number 3 and popped it out here. So that's how you get information out of an array. You just give the array's name and the element number that you want to get from the array. Okay, now I can also change, because these are variables so they can be changed, I can change what's in a slot in my array or one of the elements. So to do that, I would just say shopping list. Again, I have to tell it what position I want to change. So let's say I'm going to decide I don't want potato salad. I can say shopping list 3 equals, and I can assign a new value here. So maybe I want, instead I want some baked beans instead of potato salad. Okay, so this is going to go to the third position in my shopping list array. It's going to overwrite potato salad with baked beans, and then let's go ahead and print it out again. So let me copy and paste this. So we will print out what's in the array at slot at element 3 before I change it. Then we'll make the change, and then we'll print it back out again just to see that it's actually changing it like I told it to. So we'll go back out here into Unity. Alright, you can see it says potato salad right now in element 3. If I hit play, it now says baked beans over here. And if you look in the console, it said potato salad. Then we made the change and told it to print again, and it put out baked beans. So that's how you can change a value inside of an array. Alright, so we'll go back into our script here. So that is getting values, changing values, and just like any other variable type, you can assign values, change values, all of that. Okay, so that is basic Unity arrays, how to declare them. You can make an array of any type, any variable type at all, and you can stick items of that type into that list. Now the next thing we're going to look at in this video is something called loops. Alright, loops and arrays work hand in hand, and so we talked about how to set up an array, which is a list of multiple items. Now let's talk about using a loop. So a loop is a way that we can do lines of code more than one time. So let's say that I've got my shopping list here, and I want to print out I want to debug.log every item in my list. Okay, so I could do it just by doing several debug.log statements, right? Like I could copy this guy, paste them in here, and I could say, okay, give me element 0, because remember array start at 0, and then I could tell it, let's do element 1, and then element 2. So I could just keep doing this and put in every element in my list here. There's 3, and then here's 4. So I could have it print them out just like this, 1, 2, 3, 4. Matter of fact, let's just comment out these lines here for now so that we don't get too much clutter. Alright, and when I run this, it's going to print out all these elements here in order. So let's try that. And you can see it said chips, hot dog, buns, potato salad, mustard. Chips, hot dog, buns, potato salad, mustard. Same as over here. So I could print them out like that. But that took 5 lines of code to do that. Okay, and just imagine if my shopping list had 100 items or 1,000 items in it. I would have to type 1 line of code for every item in my list. So instead of typing them out, what I can do is I can put this inside of a loop and just loop through a command as many times as I need to and print this out. So here's what that would look like. So this is loops, and this is going to be a for loop. We have a couple of types of loops we use. The for loop is one we tend to use the most. We start with the word for, And then there's a couple of variations on how you can set these up, but the basic one is like this. Okay, so you need 3 pieces of information here for a for loop. The first thing you're going to put in these parentheses is a counter variable. So you're going to declare a variable. We usually use an integer here because we're counting whole numbers for indexes of a array. So I'd say for int I, and you see I a lot used as kind of a traditional, counter variable for loops. Been around for a long time. So we would say for int I equals 0 and a semicolon. Okay, then we're going to give it piece number 2. So piece number 1 here was the counter variable being set up and initialized. Now we give it a condition that it has to check each time it loops to see if it should continue looping, because at some point we want it to stop looping. So we're going to test I. We're going to say we're going to loop, and the condition is I less than shopping list dot length. Okay, so we want this loop to continue while the value of I is less than shopping list dot length. Shopping list dot length is going to return to me the length of my list. Okay, so how many items do I have in my list? Well, if you look out here in Unity, I have 5 items in my list, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's going to return to me the size of this list, the 5. Okay, that's the length. So this will become a 5 right here. So as long as I is less than 5, it's going to keep going. Okay, and then the third piece is what to do with I each time we loop. So I want I to increase by 1. So I'm going to use my shortcut for math that we showed back a while ago and say I++. And that just means add 1 to I and store that answer back on top of I. So each time this loop goes, it's going to add 1 to I. I'll get 1 bigger. So that's the setup for my loop. So you start with 4, and then right here, the first piece of information you need is the counter variable. That's what I is. And then you put a semicolon, and then you want the condition to test to see if we keep looping. And then we have to put in what to do with I. So then we say increase I by 1. Okay, that's what we're doing here. Now, we need a body for this. This is the loop. It needs to know what instructions belong to it. So we put in an open and a curly bracket. Open and close curly bracket, so that we can tell it some instructions to run. So now what I want to do is I want to keep doing what I did here. Okay, so let's actually take one of these debug.logs. Let's copy and paste that in. But now, instead of saying the actual number, I'm just going to put I here. Okay, because I is my integer variable. Alright, so each time this loops, it's going to run this line of code, but each time it loops, I is going to have a different value. And if I has a different value, it's going to get a different line out of my array. So the first time this runs, I will be 0. Okay, it will check is I less than the list of the length of the list. The shopping list length was a 5. So 0 is less than 5. It's true, so it's going to loop. It's going to come do all the instructions from here to here, the open to the closing bracket. It's going to do debug.log. It's going to go to shopping list and get the I item, which is going to be the 0 item, and it's going to do the debug on it. It hits the bottom of the loop. It's going to come back up. It's going to do the third part here, the I++, so I will now be 1. And then it comes back and says, okay, is I, which is now 1, less than 5? It is, so it's going to loop again. It'll come down and do the debug.log. I is now 1, so it's going to give me the item on line 1 of my shopping list array, element 1, and put that in my console. Okay, hits the bottom of the loop, goes up and adds 1 to I. I is now 2. Is 2 less than 5? Yes, it is. So forth and so on. When it gets to 4, so let's say I is now 4. 4 is less than 5. So it does the item number 4. Okay. Hits the bottom of the loop, makes it a 5, then it says is 5 less than 5. 5 is not less than 5, so it's going to stop looping at that point and it's just going to drop out of the loop. So it'll just go down and do whatever is after this closing bracket. So it's going to sit here and go round and round and round and round until it's done, and then it exits out the bottom. Alright, now in this case, we do want it to stop on element 4. Right? We don't want to do element 5 because there is no element 5. Remember, in an array, the size is 5, but in numbers from 0 to 4. That means the last item in the array is item 4. If I went for an item 5, I get an error that says index is out of range because it's basically saying, hey, you don't have something at that spot. That's off the end of your list. So that's kind of how the loop works well with the array. Okay, so I'm actually going to go ahead and comment out these debug.logs I did a minute ago. There we go. So the only active code here in my whole program, everything else is commented out, is just my variable declarations and then this loop here. Okay, so let's save it, and it should print out all my items in order from item 0 through item 4. So we're going to go out here into Unity, and let's clear out the last stuff, and let's hit play. And here we go. We got chips, hot dog, buns, potato salad, and mustard. So that was the loop going all the way through and taking each item out of my array and printing it to the console with the debug.log. Okay? So we can be inventive with these loops here. We can do all sorts of things with them, but the main thing that we use them for is to work with arrays, or maybe you're going to spawn a bunch of enemies, and so you use a loop to spawn individual enemies till you've reached the max number that you want to spawn. All sorts of applications here for this. Now, one thing that's interesting is you can actually loop through lists forward or backwards. So, for instance, if I wanted to go through the list here backwards, through my shopping list backwards, I could set this up to where I starts at the end of my list. So the end of my list is going to be the length minus 1. So let's just move this around a little bit. So if I say I equals shopping list.length minus 1, that's going to give me the last index number in my array, right? Because remember, I might have 5 items, but the last item is actually at the length, which is 5 minus 1. It's a 4 because we start at 0, so you always take 1 off. So I could start I at 4 this time because shopping list.length in this case is 5 minus 1 is 4. I could then test to do this while I is greater than or equal to 0. So it's because we do have an item at 0, but once we're less than 0, we want to stop. So while I is greater than or equal to 0, I want to keep looping, and then instead of adding 1 to I each time, I would subtract 1 from I. So I make that a minus minus. So now when it goes through, I is going to be 5 minus 1 is 4. 4 is greater than or equal to 0. It's going to do this. It's going to go to shopping list and print I, which is 4. It's going to go up here and take 1 away from I at the end of the loop to make I 3. And then it's going to say, is 3 greater than or equal to 0? It is. So it'll print 3, loop again, it'll print 2, 1. It's going to get to 0. Is 0 greater than or equal to 0? It is. So it'll print 0. It'll take 1 away. We'll have a negative 1 for I. Is negative 1 greater than or equal to 0? No, it's not, so the loop will stop. So let's save it and test this, and we should have our list in reverse order. Alright, clear out our console, hit play, and this time it started with mustard. See, mustard's in my 4th element here, but it printed it first. Then it went to potato salad, okay, buns, hot dogs, and then chips. So it went through it backwards. And so some people like to loop through lists forwards, some like to loop through backwards. It depends on what you're doing and kind of personal preference as you go through, but that is basically how loops work. Okay, loops have some sort of a counter. They have some sort of a condition that they test to see if they should continue to loop, and then they do something with that counter variable at the end. Okay, what you got to be careful of with loops is if you don't do the conditions and the counters right, you can get in what's called an infinite loop. An infinite loop is one that does not end ever. And so that will end up locking your computer down basically, because it'll just get stuck right here, spinning around and around and around, and nothing else is going to be able to happen. So you'll freeze up your program. So if you see Unity kind of freeze up when you're testing it and you're using loops, it's possible that you have an infinite loop situation going on and you want to go back in and look at your loops for that. Okay, so that's a for loop. There's another kind of loop that's called a while loop, which we don't tend to use too much, so I'm not really going to go into it in this video. But it does basically the same thing. It just allows you to structure your loop a little differently. So the for loop is the one that we're mainly going to be using here. So hopefully you know how to set up, at the end of this video, an array, and you know how to fill values into it out in the inspector, and you also now know how to set up a for loop, and you can make it go forwards or backwards. You could even be kind of crazy and you can make it just give you the even numbers or the odd numbers by how you set up I and how you do the math here. There's all sorts of things you could do here with your loop and your counter variables. Okay, so I showed you how to fill an array out here in the inspector, but let me show you also how you can assign values in the script. So when you declare an array, you can actually set it equal to some values here, just like we did other variable types. With an array, it's a little different. You set it equal to, and you need to open and a close curly bracket. And inside the brackets, you would put the elements that you want. So for instance, these are strings, so they have to be in quotes. So I could say, maybe this time instead I want some chicken, and then you put a comma, and then in quotes you put the next one. So the comma breaks it between the different elements, and it'll drop it in the array in the order that you put it in. So chicken would go into element 0. Then maybe we have some stuffing, and then some salad, and then we want some pie, and let's do one more because this is a length 5 array, and we would put in some ice cream. Okay, so this is actually going to go out and put in these values into the array when it is created. So we'll save this and go out into Unity. Now we're probably going to have to reset the script here because this will remember the last thing that it was. So if you go here to little gear and you click it, you can say reset, and that will go back out to the script, and it will grab the items out. So if you do make some changes in your script like I just did, you won't see them reflected out here in the inspector until you reset. So again, to reset a script to its values from the actual script you typed, you click the gear over here next to the script's name and just hit reset. It'll go back out to the script, and it will look at it and pull all the values out of that the definition area there for your variables. So now I have chicken, stuffing, salad, pie, and ice cream. Okay. Now I did go out here ahead of time and set this size to 5. If I set the size to 0 here and wipe all that out and then go to reset, it'll automatically size this to the number of items that I declared it to be. So however many items you put there, it'll size it to that automatically for you. And if I hit play now, it should give me, let's see, we're still in reverse order here with that loop, so it looped back through my array and just gave me the new items out here in my debug.log. So that is how you can declare an array and put in the initial items that you want. So it's kind of personal preference what you want to do. You could either load it right here in the script, or you could set the array up out here in the inspector and type in the items right out here in the list. Whatever seems to make most sense to you is perfectly okay. So that's it for our video today on arrays and loops, and we will see you for the next topic next time.